Good morning. My name is Greg Upham. I'm the Stormwater Management Coordinator for the town of Smyrna. And we're out here today about to take a float trip on Stewart Creek. The reason we're doing so is that we would like to inform the public why we have a stormwater management program and why it's so important for us to be protecting Stewart Creek. Oftentimes people drive up and down the road and they'll maybe see a sign or a bridge and they'll think, well, there's a creek down there, but until you've actually gotten down into the creek itself, canoeing or fishing or walking the greenway, you really don't have a full concept of the importance and the beauty of a creek. Stewart Creek is the main stream that runs through Smyrna, and it has about 3 or 4 tributaries to it. And today we're going to launch up towards the Smyrna High School and go as far south, or as far north I should say, downstream past the Sam Davis home. As we go down the stream, Toby Francis, who will be in the other boat, and I will be talking about different aspects of the streams, how the development in Smyrna in recent years and for many years before that have affected the stream itself. We will also be showing you how to properly portage, in other words, take out of the stream when we come to the low-head dams, and how to put back in. So that if you should like to take up the sport or the hobby of canoeing or kayaking, you would have a better idea of what safety measures you need to take. Not many of us actually experience the serenity of our streams because not many of us come to visit them. One of the intents of this presentation is to illustrate the reasons for the MS4 permit. More importantly, this presentation was meant to explain why all of us need to take more responsibility in the health of our streams. It's important to remember that the person in the back of the boat or the stern is basically the captain of the canoe. They direct, they make the changes of direction in the boat. But the person in the bow is very important as well, because that person indicates if there are any obstructions they need to look out for. Always, always wear a life preserver. Always wear a life preserver, and wear as lightweight clothing as you can, preferably polyesters instead of cottons. If you should capsize or get wet from paddle water, that sort of thing, your clothing will dry out and won't get that wet to start with. One other thing, especially if you're hiking or caving or boating, make sure that before you leave your house that someone that's important to you knows where you're going, who you're going with, and when you expect to come back home. So if you don't make it home by that time period, they'll know to start thinking about you. It is important to note that forested areas absorb far more water from precipitation than what grassed areas do, while grassed areas absorb more precipitation than impervious surfaces such as roads, rooftops, driveways, and sidewalks. When it rains on the forest, the limbs and leaves known as the canopy, along with the thick, humus soil, absorb the rainwater, while the tree roots also take up this water. This process greatly delays the water from reaching the nearby stream or sinkhole, thus resembling the natural state of Middle Tennessee before the arrival of the colonialists during the 1700s. Grasslands do not delay the flow of water nearly as well as forests, thereby allowing larger volumes of water to reach the stream much sooner than what the stream was designed to carry. Trees are the most important factor protecting the health of a stream. The root mass holds the bank material in place, while individual roots that protrude into the stream provide habitat for fauna, also known as animals. The roots take up nutrients which may include pollutants.
that are found in the groundwater as it moves towards the stream during the dry months of the year. The tree canopies provide shade over the stream, keeping the water temperature cooler in the hot summer in comparison to no canopy. Cooler stream water means higher oxygen concentration, which means healthier conditions for fauna. At least 5 parts per million oxygen concentrations must exist in stream water to sustain fish populations. It is important to note that while stream water is owned by all Tennesseans, the land beneath the stream is usually owned by the landowner on either side of the stream. Because no municipality is allowed to perform work on private property, the town of Smyrna is prevented from removing any trees from the stream. Also keep in mind that removing large trees from the stream will require large equipment, which can significantly harm existing trees living along the banks. It is also important to note that a state ARAP permit is required for any in-stream work needing anything other than handheld equipment.
We've paddled about a quarter mile down Stewart Creek and are about to go underneath the railroad track and South Lowry Bridge. I wanted to point out that during this quarter mile segment that we've canoed, that we've gone through 2 major bends in the creek. And that's because by natural law, water follows the path of least resistance. And in this part of Middle Tennessee, we have quite a few fractures or joints in the bedrock. And they basically trend from northeast to southwest and also from northwest to southeast. There are 2 sets of them. And the stream follows those fractures on its way down to the Stones River. So that's why we have so many sharp bends in Stewart Creek. It makes the canoeing trip pretty interesting, but I thought the viewer would like to know why we have so many of them. As we continue our float, I'd like the viewers to keep their eyes on some of these trees and notice that a lot of these trees appear to be growing up out of the creek itself. Keep an eye on where the base of the trunk is in reference to the roots themselves. And you'll find in many cases that the roots are actually in the bank higher than the base of the trunk of the tree, which indicates that at some point in time, when that tree was young, it was growing at the top of the bank. Now that bank has been eroded. That sediment that the root mass was in has been removed. But that tree was able to survive and continue to live, even though now it's sitting out over the water. Eventually those trees will die. They will die and they will fall into the creek, and they will serve as a blockage to the flow of water, which will mean that we may have additional stream bank erosion due to the tree diverting the flow of the water. So it's very important that we control the height, somehow try to control the height of the water during the storm events so that we have less and less damage to our stream banks. Back before the settlers arrived, all this area through here, Middle Tennessee, for the most part was wooded. It was a wooded area. And forests and woods absorb rainfall quite well. In fact, they're the best type of coverage to have. As the settlers came in, they removed those trees so they could have areas for their cattle to graze and for places to plant their crops, their cotton, whatever. Right along here on River Right, you can see where that tree there, that small tree there, the roots at one time were actually positioned higher. So that tree actually fell very slowly over years and years, but has continued. Well, that one's actually dead now. But you can see that we've probably lost a good 10 feet or so on either side of the bank, either side of the stream. Okay, we just finished portaging around the Gregory Mill Dam, which you see behind us here. And I wanted to draw your attention to the amount of water flowing over the top of the dam. Right now, that amount of water is not too awfully dangerous, but during heavier storm events where that water can be a lot deeper, that water that you see coming over the top of the dam, if you should accidentally or intentionally go over that dam, you will be sucked down underneath the white water that you see there, and most likely you would be held in place because that water actually flows back towards the base of the dam and circulates down there and would hold you in place. To the right there, or what we would call, canoers would call river left, which is all from the perspective as you're going downstream, is the spillway. Now this dam was originally built to deflect the water down a fracture, which is off on the other side of the spillway, to the lower segment of the stream that goes down. Basically the stream goes down here and makes a big left turn and comes back on itself, and that water is diverted down this open fracture, and there's a mill down there, and the water would power that wheel, and they could churn different types of grains into usable powder and mixes and whatnot. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in, we found a nice low spot down here about, maybe 75 yards down below the dam, and we'll put in at that spot, and we'll head, of course, downstream, and eventually as we go around the big left turn, we'll come back up on that fracture, so we'll have water coming into the stream from the left. And we're headed on our way down to Enon Springs Road. We'll cross underneath that. There's some rapids there that should give us a little bit of a thrill as we go across them. And then eventually we'll make it our way to the second dam, which is Sam Davis Dam.
Based on a town-wide 2010 MTSU dye trace study, the water coming out of this spring could have entered the ground anywhere between this Brandon Trail site and the Sam Ridley Parkway interchange of Interstate 24, some 4 miles to the west. A relationship exists between the stream water and the groundwater found in the adjacent banks and surrounding earth. Actually, these are both the same body of water, while only the stream water is actually visible. During the wet winters and springs, streams carry so much water that the water actually moves into the bank material, thus recharging or adding water to the surrounding groundwater. Conversely, during the dry summer and falls, streams carry much less water, enabling the surrounding groundwater to recharge the stream at locations known as springs or seeps.
It's through this next segment of stream that the FBI had the town of Smyrna and others help them out in the Annalise Guerra investigation. There were 2 inflatable dams that were installed in the creek, one just about in this area that we are now, filled with creek water, and then another one about the equal distance from the bend at the dental office down there behind the food line, and the second one was placed down there beyond the bend. And then this entire amount of stream here was pumped dry, and the water was taken across this bend on the property here on the river left and discharged back into the stream below the second dam.
Assess the speed of the stream before committing to a float trip to avoid speeds that are too swift to safely navigate. Novice paddlers should avoid streams with any significant stream speed. Learn if there are any low-head dams present and where you must portage to avoid accidentally going over them before paddling the float trip. Always portage a safe distance upstream from the Gregory Mill and Sam Davis low-head dams. The worst pollutant in Tennessee and the nation is sediment. For the most part, sediment originates from either construction sites or eroding stream banks. The Stormwater Management Program has been very busy for the past 6 years controlling construction sites to the point that nowadays there is very little sediment leaving any site. This leaves eroding stream banks as the leading source of sediment loading. The other major stream pollutants are litter and chemicals. Litter, especially cigarette butts and plastic shopping bags, harm the animals found in and around the stream by reducing oxygen concentrations in the water, killing their food supplies, and damaging their homes or habitat. Chemicals, especially automotive fluids and pesticides and herbicides, add poisonous substances known as toxins to the stream. These toxins kill the insect larvae that fish eat, causing the fish to either die or migrate downstream where these pollutants may be less concentrated. The paddler in the bow of the boat should be wary of deadfalls or strainers. These are submerged trees including limbs, trunks, and roots, which can easily trap your foot if you should capsize. Take extra caution not to capsize when these are present. Wear a properly sized U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket before paddling a float trip. Never remove your life jacket while in your boat or standing in or near the water. Unless you are a very experienced paddler, you have no business paddling solo. Always try to place the heavier paddler in the stern or rear of the boat. This paddler should also be the most experienced of the two. This paddler is to set the pace of paddling and to navigate based on information provided by the other paddler. The role of the paddler in the bow or front of the boat is to check for obstructions in or above the water and assist in paddling and navigating. Never overload a boat with people, pets, or supplies. Always board a boat by placing feet directly in the center of the boat, bending at the waist, holding onto the gunnels at locations directly across from one another, and sitting down as gently as possible. Once situated, always face forward. Never turn around, never stand up, or move around unless the boat has been firmly stabilized by the other paddler. Paddling of a boat should be done by using the shoulders, arms, and upper torso for reaching and pulling of the paddle, while keeping your motion in line with the length of the boat. Never dive out of a boat and never jump into water that you are not certain is completely free of deadfalls and shallow rock. And finally, please remember, alcohol, drugs, and horseplay should never be part of any float trip.